Hello again, welcome back. My name is Jiroux, and this is my final project for Intro to Computer Graphics at Oregon State University, which I have modeled this 3D animated scene. Now, the animation comes in the form of the fireflies, and I will get to that in a minute. First, I'm going to start off. I'm gonna go through the everything in this scene in terms of how it was created. So the first thing that was created were these trees. The trees are a collection of cones at different sizes, meaning different slices, so that way it gives a different number of rungs per tree. Uh, they also are they're a list object that I'm able to use to scale, which gives these different layers of trees, different like stages of life and growth for these trees. Like some are skinnier than others, some are fatter, some are taller. I really wanted to give the idea of variance. Um, And then also within these lists, so they're the cones, like I've already explained, and then the cylinders below are a special GLU quadric object, which I am able to put a cylinder inside of because there is no like glut solid cylinder as far as I know. But this was just a simple, easy way to get a cylinder without having to procedurally kind of map it out with quads. Yeah. So that was the first thing that was made were these trees, and they're probably my favorite thing in the scene, just because I don't know, they're very kind of I don't know, they're cute. Anyways, so the next thing that was created was actually this tent. This tent is a list as well. Almost everything in this scene is comprised in a list, but this tent is made up of GL triangles. You can kind of pick them out. It's a little hard to see in all of the orange. Oh, turned a little too far there. Oh, and that's I didn't even mention. So I'm moving around in this scene. So I can't rotate my camera like I'm currently trying to just make the camera rotate on its own. That can't happen because if I wanted to implement what I wanted to implement, which I did, the only way that I could do it and not have it like so that way you as a user might fly through the scene or like clip into the earth, I had to turn off that functionality in order for this to work. So the character can move forward and backward, such as the W and the S keys, kind of like just normal gameplay mechanics. And then it can rotate left and right with A and D. So you can move forward, you can turn in order to continue moving in the direction that you want. You can't do both simultaneously. This is me trying. So, yeah, I was really happy with being able to get this sort of smooth movement despite kind of the slowness of it. Okay, but so the tent, real quick, let's move back over to the tent. The tent is comprised of these GL triangles and GL quads to give it this shape. And then these down here are, again, the GLU quadric object variable, which I put in a cylinder in it again, but this time when creating it, I made the top, which is actually at the bottom, equal to 0 in order to give it this sort of spike shape, as if it were a tent stake being driven into the ground. And I wanted it to stick up out a little bit, like tent stakes probably don't stick up out of the ground. It's been a few years now since I've camped traditionally, so maybe I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure they don't stick out this far. But I wanted it to be visible. And in the inspiration image, which I have linked at the bottom of my report, it definitely does seem like they stick out a bit. So that is the next thing that was built. I guess other than I should specify, like the ground is not something that I really consider to be built. The ground technically, and for some reason, I don't know why it's not ever showing up, and I have it toggled to the T key, but there should be a grass BMP texture stretched across this that was given to another student over Piazza from Bailey after he the student didn't properly convert the file from, I think, JPEG to BMP. But either way, the BMP conversion didn't actually happen. And so Bailey had converted the file and submitted it. And I tried to use that, but it did not want to show up. What did show up, what I was so excited to show up, was the moon. The moon is gorgeous. It's probably, like, other than the trees, probably my most favorite thing. I love the moon. Um, the moon itself as well. Oh, I just dropped my notes. I'm going to need those. So the moon is a light source and the fire pit here is a light source. So we could kind of, like, the moon is very bright. That's very much for certain. It's just a white point light, very simple. Just hangs out behind the mountain there in order to cast a white light on all of those objects. And then you can kind of see in here, there's like a red ball in here in order to just kind of mark where the light from the fire is coming from, even though there's no fire. I did want to put in particles, but it just, between battling everything and trying to get it all to work, it's just, I did not have the time to also include particles. So, there is a red light being cast from here that you can kind of see affect the colors on the trees as it hits the faces, because all of these are shaded like GL flat in order to get these like angles in the trees to give it this sort of like, there's uh, evergreens. Do evergreens have leaves? Pines. To well, I mean, they don't look like pines, but I think you can understand the intent. Let me pick up my notes now. What else am I missing here? Oh, what? Oh, hopefully you didn't see that. Okay. It wasn't anything bad. I just hit my Windows key. All right. So the next thing that I did, and that also isn't contained in a list, are these fireflies that you can kind of see floating around. Now, there are 3 types of fireflies in terms of animation. So there are 3 different animation cycles for the fireflies that I have created in order to, like, give it sort of a variance in terms of, oh, I hit the Windows key again. I apologize. Um, Anyways, the fireflies, they will float up at different times. Like, I don't know, sometimes like did a bad and I stuck 2 right next to each other, and that was not intended. But at the same time, my code has become so cluttered that I don't even know if I could find these 2 individual fireflies right here. And I guess this one too, these 2 right here, but that isn't as close together as these 2 are. Okay, but anyways, yes, so they float up at different times in order to give it the idea that, like, they have different floatings, and then I did try to animate it. Oh, these were animated using key times, which is the key time functionality that was given to us. The animation cycle is over 20 seconds. So just to give it the impression that it was floating very softly and slowly, because fireflies are typically just generally very slow, soft creatures. They don't really like move around and buzz around so much as they just kind of float up. So I tried to mimic sort of a natural movement along the X and Z axis too for the fireflies, but I just couldn't find anything that I was happy with. So they are only animating along the Y axis. But they all, well, not all of them, obviously. Some of them go off at the same time. But I think the only way that it could have looked natural is if each one had their own animation. And with everything else that I was trying to accomplish, I just did not have the time. So there's 3. But along with the 3, and I think that this is kind of clever. I don't know if this was talked about in class. I don't think so. But you could kind of see these colors shift in the fireflies themselves. And I don't know if I really want to call them fireflies. They're really more like depressed little Zelda fairies. So, you can see that the colors are shifting. You can see, well, this is kind of so yellow to green, and then eventually to black as well. I see that I did not time the color shift appropriately, or I might have just mixed up which animation goes with which color change cycle. It got really not confusing, but cluttered very quickly. So, but the animation cycle, so it does these lifts, and they also do the color change, and that's also based off of the key times uh, functionality, which changes the set material property of the I think it's just a glut solid sphere being created. Yeah, these are glut solid spheres versus this big moon back here is the OSU sphere. Um, okay, well, I should probably get into what isn't around, what I'm really kind of upset about. I'm going to go for the biggest one, shadows. I really, really, really wanted there to be shadows, and I just had the most difficult time trying to get shadows to work appropriately. First, it was just like finding the right GLSL code for the program that actually handled GLM isms, the variables and such. Uh, that took some digging and then I found it within the Shadows 29 zip on the resource page. Um, but when I tried to do it on my own, and I just tried to take one of these trees that I had made, put it into that file, put it on a flat plane, try to get it to recognize that it's there and have it cast a shadow, it smashed it all into like one plane of existence, and it was really sad to see. And no matter what I did, I couldn't get it to stop like smashing itself down, and I have no idea what caused that, because all I did was just call the same list that I had been creating like right here, so I have no idea. um but okay, aside from the shadows not working, and I do have all of the shader code within my project, but besides the shadows, the next problem that I really had was trying to get any OBJ file to load. I could not get a single one to load, no matter what I do. If I create it, if I go and download one, it never never works out. I always get the same error of, let me see, I have it here, invalid or corrupt file at the very, very first line or like space within the OBJ file instructions, I'm guessing is what the best word to call that file, just a instruction file on how it's built. But I never got anything to work. So I wanted to have these trees be something that was just imported in. I wanted the campfire, the tent, all of these things I had wanted to either model myself or have a model from a free OBJ software on an online source be able to utilize that, but nothing ever worked. Um, and then I also have a very difficult time with textures. I'm sure you've noticed by now that the only thing that's textured in this scene is the moon, and that is really just by pure luck. Um, the Most of the time, whenever I try to convert files from a JPEG or a PNG into a BMP and I send it through a converter, it always comes back, like whenever I go to actually input my texture into the scene, I get an error saying that it's the wrong compression 3. And I'm not ever certain if that means that the compression needs to be 3 or that the compression is 3 and it shouldn't be. So that's a hard one. Most of the time, I can't get a texture to work unless I go into Google Drawings in Google Drive and make something, port that out to a PNG, and then convert that. That was how I was able to make the rainbow BMP in Project 3. Project 3 was texture mapping. Yes. So that was like the only time that I had success really, other than this moon. This moon was a JPEG image that I found from, I know, and it must have been some sort of fancy space website because they referenced that all of their images came from Hubble, the Hubble, NASA Hubble telescope. Yes, I believe it's a telescope. But yeah, so I was able to get this texture from them, and I mean, it looks great. It kind of makes the rest of the scene look really like blocky in comparison, but I was happy to have like an actual moon texture up in the corner. Um, so yeah, that's probably all of the biggest glaring problems with my project and what I set out to do. I really wanted there to be shadows. I wanted this really depth immersive feel of being deep in a forest and only having like illuminated surfaces because of the moon and the fire, and just have it feel really like, I don't know, confined, but in a good way. So, um, yeah, I don't know. I definitely learned that like, well, that I code very messily if I'm not careful, because it can get kind of crazy if you go and peer into it. But um, I also just take for granted things like Oh no, sorry, not OpenGL. OpenGL is such a skill that I've got to learn to master if I want to be able to accomplish all of the things that I wanted to do, because maybe the scope of my project was just a little large in terms of what I wanted to accomplish, but I am happy with what I accomplished in the end. Oh, excuse me. But it definitely makes you realize that I take for granted engines like Unreal 4. Uh, just knowing that I could have made this scene as I had wanted, with the depth and shading and shadows and light and everything that I would want, including these fireflies, and maybe even like better, and just in a fraction of the time. I'm grateful to know OpenGL, and I want to learn more about it, but at this, it's just like, wow. But I am happy with what I created, and I hope that you are too. I really do like the scene in the end, and really right there is like the money shot. All right, I'm gonna call it here. So thank you so much for for coming with me, I guess, on this journey of OpenGL. I had a wonderful time. I can't wait to learn more. I've already picked up a Udemy course just to go into it a little deeper. And yeah, thank you so much. I hope you have a wonderful new year. 'Cause I don't think I'll be hearing from you again until after then. Bye bye.